The skies above Kareth burned with crimson fire as enemy ships descended on the city. Alara stood at the cliff's edge, watching the chaos unfold. She had been banished from her people months ago, marked as dangerous and unfit to live among them. Now she saw their walls breaking, their warriors falling, and no one strong enough to push the invaders back. Her hands tightened around the hilt of her great axe. The weapon still carried the glowing runes of her clan, though they had stripped her of rank and honor. She told herself she did not care about them anymore. But as the smoke rose higher, something deep inside her refused to let the city fall without a fight. The people of Kareth had feared her because she had no equal in combat. She fought with a ferocity they called unnatural. Her strength frightened them. Her eyes glowed brighter than the sacred fires, and her temper could ignite at the smallest threat. They had sent her away for peace, but now peace was burning with them inside it. On the far ridge, she saw something strange. A human stood alone, facing the oncoming wave of armored beasts. Humans were rare here, outsiders from distant worlds, often underestimated, yet this one did not run. He raised his weapon and shouted a challenge that cut through the roar of battle. Even from this distance, Alara could feel the courage in his voice. The invaders slowed, as if uncertain about this. Lone defender. Alara's sharp vision caught the way he moved, precise and calm, as if he had fought wars before. She knew then that this human was not here by chance. And for some reason, he was fighting for her city when even its own rulers had fled. She leaped down the rocky slope, her armored boots crushing the loose stones. Every step brought her closer to the battlefield and to the human who stood without fear. She wondered if he had any idea what he was facing. The creatures were from the Vorthan Dominion, known for slaughtering entire colonies. Even the bravest warriors often broke before their charge. By the time she reached the base of the hill, the human was surrounded. 3 massive Vorthan soldiers closed in, their spiked weapons raised. Alara did not hesitate. Her axe swung in, a red arc cleaving through the first invader's armor as if it were cloth. The others turned toward her, but she was already moving, striking with speed and power that blurred her figure. When the last of them fell, the human looked at her in silence. He was breathing hard, his weapon dripping with black Vorthan blood. She expected him to thank her or demand to know who she was. Instead, he simply studied her with sharp eyes, as if measuring her worth. Then he said the last thing she expected to hear. "I need a guard. Someone who can keep me alive in the days to come. Will you take the job, or should I keep looking?" Alara almost laughed. She had been shunned by her own people, called a danger to everyone around her. And now a stranger from another world was offering her the one thing she thought she would never have again, a place to fight for something greater than herself. She could have walked away. She could have told him she owed nothing to a human. But the sound of more Vorthan war horns echoed in the distance. The enemy was regrouping, and the city was running out of time. She rested her axe on her shoulder and gave her answer. "I will guard you. But understand this, I fight my own way." The human gave a small smile, almost as if that was exactly what he wanted to hear. Alara and the human moved quickly away from the battlefield. The smoke of the burning city rose behind them, mixing with the fading cries of the wounded. The path ahead cut through a forest of twisted black trees, their branches swaying under the weight of ash. Neither spoke for several minutes, each measuring the other in silence. Finally, Alara broke the quiet. "You did not answer my question. Why is a human fighting here?" she asked, her voice sharp but curious. The man glanced at her without slowing. "Because I was hired to do something dangerous. And I am still alive because I plan my moves carefully," he replied. His tone was calm, but there was steel in it. The human's name was Jace. He told her he had come to Kareth seeking an ancient device lost during an old war. The device, he said, could turn the tide against the Vorthan Dominion. It had been hidden deep within the mountains, far from the main cities. But now the Dominion was moving faster than anyone expected, and time was running out. Alara listened but said nothing for a moment. She had heard of weapons hidden in the mountains, though most called them myths. Her people had always feared such relics, claiming they were cursed. She wondered if this human was chasing something real or chasing death. Yet there was something in his eyes when he spoke that told her he believed every word. As they walked, Jace studied her weapon. "That axe of yours is not standard for your kind," he said. "The runes look old, older than you." She gave a short laugh. "They are. My ancestors forged it before the first Vorthan raid. It has tasted the blood of every enemy my family has faced. They feared me because I used it without hesitation." The trail narrowed, forcing them close together. Alara noticed how Jace moved, balanced, silent, always scanning the shadows. He was not a warrior by size alone, but by discipline. It reminded her of predators in the deep forests, always ready to strike or vanish. She respected that, though. She did not say it aloud. They reached a clearing where the light broke through the ash clouds. Jace stopped suddenly and held up a hand. She froze beside him, scanning the tree line. Her hearing caught the faint scrape of metal on stone. An ambush. Before she could react, black-armored Vorthan soldiers stepped out, surrounding them in a half-circle. Jace raised his weapon slowly, but his eyes flicked toward her for a brief moment. She understood the message without words. They would fight back to back. The first Vorthan lunged at Jace, but he sidestepped, driving his blade into the soldier's side. Alara's axe cleaved another from shoulder to chest. Blood, smoke, and sparks filled the air as the fight grew fierce. One soldier swung a spiked chain at her head, but she caught it on her axe handle and pulled hard, dragging him into range. Jace finished him with a swift strike. They moved together as if they had fought side by side for years, each trusting the other to cover the gaps. When the last enemy fell, the forest was silent again. Jace wiped his blade on the grass and looked at her. "You do not hold back," he said. "Good, I need someone like that." She gave a small nod. "You will get it. But if you betray me, I will end you before the Dominion does." He did not flinch at her words. Instead, he smiled faintly, as if the threat was exactly what he expected. They gathered supplies from the fallen soldiers, food packs, extra ammunition, and a map marked with strange symbols. The markings pointed toward the mountains Jace had mentioned. Alara studied it and realized the path was through territory even her people avoided. The danger there was not only the Dominion. Something older waited in those shadows. Jace folded the map and tucked it away. "We move at dawn," he said. "Rest now. The next days will be harder than anything you have faced." Alara sat near the edge of the clearing, her axe across her knees, watching the forest. For the first time in months, she felt the pull of purpose again. And that purpose was walking beside her. The first light of dawn cut through the ash clouds as Alara and Jace left the clearing. The forest around them seemed quieter than before, as if the creatures within could sense the danger that lay ahead. Their boots crunched softly over the frost-covered ground, and the air carried the sharp scent of cold stone from the mountains in the distance. Jace walked in front, his eyes scanning the shadows with steady focus. Alara followed close, her axe resting against her shoulder. She studied his movements and noted how his pace shifted when the terrain changed. He was not simply leading them forward. He was searching for signs of danger that others might miss. The trees thinned as they climbed higher. Jagged cliffs loomed ahead, their faces streaked with dark veins of ore. Alara had traveled through these mountains once before, long ago during a hunt. She remembered the silence and the feeling of being watched from places too high to see. That same feeling crept back into her now. At a narrow pass, Jace stopped and pointed to the ground. Faint tracks crossed their path, clawed footprints far too large to belong to any human or Vorthan. Alara crouched to examine them. The depth and spread of the tracks told her the creature was heavy, fast, and hunting. She straightened slowly and met Jace's eyes. He gave a short nod, confirming her thought. The wind carried a distant roar, low and rumbling. It echoed through the stone walls around them, making it impossible to tell the direction. Alara tightened her grip on her weapon. "Whatever that is, it is not part of your mission," she said. Jace's voice was calm but firm. "It is part of it now. If it hunts here, it will hunt us." His gaze was steady, and she knew he meant to face it if needed. They pressed on, climbing the twisting trail that wound along the cliff's edge. Loose stones tumbled into the deep ravine below. With every step they took, the cold bit into their skin, and their breaths came out in pale clouds. Alara kept glancing upward, scanning the ledges above them for movement. Shadows shifted with the light, but nothing revealed itself. By midday, they reached a plateau that opened into a wide basin between peaks. Snow dusted the rocky floor, and scattered boulders offered spots for cover. Jace moved carefully, testing each step before putting his weight down. Halfway across, a sudden thud shook the ground, then another. A massive shape emerged from behind. A ridge of stone. It was a beast unlike any Alara had seen. Its body was armored in jagged black scales, and its eyes glowed with a burning gold light. Two curved horns swept back from its skull, and each step it took cracked the frozen earth beneath its claws. A deep growl rolled from its chest as it fixed its gaze on them. Jace drew his weapon, but Alara stepped forward, placing herself between him and the beast. "Stay behind me," she said, her voice low but steady. The creature advanced slowly, its breath steaming in the cold air. Alara lowered her stance, her axe held ready. She had been banished for being too dangerous, but against this foe, that danger was her greatest weapon. The beast lunged without warning, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Alara swung her axe in a wide arc, the blade slamming into its armored shoulder. Sparks burst from the impact, and the creature roared in pain. Jace fired at its exposed flank, the shot striking deep enough to draw black blood. The beast spun toward him, but Alara's second strike caught it across the jaw. For several minutes, the fight was nothing but motion, steel, and thunder. Alara's strength kept the beast's focus on her while Jace moved to exploit every opening. When the creature finally staggered, she drove the axe deep into its chest, the runes glowing brighter as the life faded from its eyes. With a final shudder, it collapsed to the ground. They stood over the fallen beast, both breathing hard. Jace looked at her with a faint smile. "I see why they feared you," he said. She met his gaze without flinching. "Then you understand why you are still alive." The cold wind swept through the basin, carrying the scent of blood and the promise of more battles ahead. The mountain seemed quieter after the battle, but Alara knew the silence was a trick. The beast's death would not go unnoticed in this territory. Predators always watched from the edges, waiting for weakness. She and Jace moved quickly, leaving the basin behind before scavengers arrived to pick over the remains. The path narrowed again, twisting between sheer cliffs. Thin streams of snowmelt ran down the rock walls, freezing into jagged icicles that glinted in the pale light. Jace led the way now, the map in his hand. Every so often, he glanced at the symbols marked along their route, his brow furrowing as if he were working out a puzzle. Alara's attention stayed on the shadows. Her people had spoken of spirits in these mountains, old as the stone itself, guarding things no one should touch. She had dismissed those stories once, but now, with the air heavy and the light dimming even at midday, she began to wonder if there was truth hidden in the fear. They reached a high ridge where the wind cut like knives. From there, Jace pointed to a distant shape in the rock face. A dark archway yawned from the mountain, half buried under snow and ice. "That's the entrance," he said. "The device should be inside." His voice carried no hesitation, but Alara could see the tension. In his grip, the descent to the archway was treacherous. Loose stone shifted underfoot, sending pebbles skittering into the deep valley below. Twice, Alara had to catch Jace's arm to steady him, though he did not thank her. She noticed he was more focused on keeping his weapon ready than on the drop at their side. At the base, the archway loomed over them. Strange carvings twisted across its surface, half worn by time but still pulsing faintly with blue light. Alara touched the stone and felt a vibration run through her fingers. It was not the hum of machinery, but something alive, as if the mountain itself was breathing. Inside, the air was warm despite the ice outside. Their footsteps echoed across the stone floor, each sound swallowed quickly by the shadows ahead. Jace's light caught walls lined with ancient metal panels, fused into the rock. Symbols glowed faintly along the edges, the same as on the archway. Guiding them deeper into the dark, the tunnel split into 3 paths. Jace studied the map and chose the center one. "Straight ahead," he said. "The others are traps." Alara followed, her axe ready. She could hear faint sounds now, a low hum and a rhythmic clicking, too regular to be natural. It grew louder with each step. They entered a vast chamber. At its center stood a massive structure, half machine and half crystal, glowing with shifting colors. It was suspended above the ground by thick cables that vanished into the walls. Energy crackled faintly around it, casting long shadows across the floor. Jace stepped forward slowly, as if approaching something sacred. Alara circled the edge of the chamber, her eyes scanning every dark corner. She noticed the floor near the machine was marked with deep grooves, as though something heavy had been dragged across it again and again. Before she could speak, the hum of the machine shifted to a sharp tone that echoed through the chamber. From the shadows above, figures dropped silently to the floor. They wore black armor unlike the Vorthan soldiers, their masks shaped like snarling beasts. Alara counted 6 of them before they began to move. Their weapons were short, curved blades that caught the machine's glow. Jace's hand went to his gun, but Alara stepped between him and the nearest attacker. The first came fast, striking low. Alara blocked with the haft of her axe and countered, knocking him backward into another. Jace's shots rang out, dropping 2 more before they reached him. The chamber filled with the clash of steel, the crack of gunfire, and the hiss of energy from the machine. Alara fought like the danger they had feared her for, each strike deliberate and devastating. When the last attacker fell, the chamber was silent again, except for the steady pulse of the machine. Jace wiped the sweat from his brow and looked at her. "They knew we were coming," he said. She glanced at the fallen soldiers. "Then someone sent them. And they will send more." Her voice carried no fear, only certainty. Jace stepped toward the glowing machine, his eyes locked on the shifting colors within its crystal core. The air around it buzzed faintly, raising the hairs on his arms. He reached out as if to touch it, but Alara caught his wrist before his fingers could make contact. "Careful," she said. "Things like this are never unguarded." He pulled back slightly but did not take his eyes off the device. "We came here for this," he replied. "If we leave it, the Dominion will find it first." His voice was steady, but she could see the tension in the lines of his jaw. She looked at the glowing cables feeding into the walls and knew removing the machine would not be simple. The chamber's silence felt heavy, as if it was waiting for them to make a wrong move. Alara stepped closer to the machine and noticed that the grooves in the floor extended in perfect arcs around it. The marks were not from dragging. They were burn lines melted into the stone by something powerful. She tightened her grip on her axe. Jace moved to a control panel at the side of the chamber. Its surface was covered in glowing symbols, many of which matched those on his map. He tapped a few, and the hum of the machine grew louder. Energy rippled through the crystal core, sending dancing lights across the walls. "It's waking up," he said with a grim smile. A low rumble rolled through the floor beneath them. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a faint vibration passed through Alara's boots. She looked toward the tunnel they had entered through, half expecting more masked soldiers to appear. Instead, the far wall of the chamber shifted with a deep grinding sound, revealing a dark passage that had been hidden before. Without waiting, Jace grabbed his pack and moved toward the opening. "That's our way out," he said. "But first, we have to shut this down enough to move it." Alara glanced between him and the machine. "If you start pulling pieces from it, are you sure it won't kill us both?" He gave a short nod. "Not entirely sure, no." The glow from the crystal dimmed as Jace adjusted the controls, but the buzzing in the air did not fade. If anything, it deepened, pressing against their skulls. Alara scanned the shadows, her instincts screaming that something was coming. The carvings along the walls seemed to pulse now, as if alive. Then a sound rose, not mechanical, but a low guttural growl. From the hidden passage, shapes began to emerge. These were not soldiers. They were tall, skeletal figures with armor fused into their bodies, their eyes burning with cold blue fire. Alara had never seen their kind before, but every instinct told her they were older than the Dominion, older than her people. They moved without sound, spreading to block every path. Jace kept working at the panel, his focus unbroken. "Hold them off," he said. She gave no reply, only stepped forward with her axe. The first of the creatures struck fast, its bladed arm slicing through the air where her head had been a moment before. She spun low and cut across its legs, sending it crashing to the floor. The others closed in, their movements unnaturally fast for their size. Alara met them head-on, her weapon flashing in tight arcs. Sparks flew as steel met armor, and each kill came harder than the last. Jace called out over the clash of combat. "Almost there." She answered with a sharp strike that split another creature's chest. Finally, Jace stepped back from the panel. "It's ready. Help me lift it." Alara shoved the last attacker away and joined him. Together, they gripped the machine's base. It was heavier than stone, but as they lifted, it seemed to hum in their hands, as if alive. The cables tore free from the walls with a sound like snapping bones. They staggered toward the hidden passage, the weight of the device slowing them. Behind them, the remaining creatures began to rise again, their bodies twitching back to life. Alara did not look back. Her focus stayed on the tunnel ahead, the faint light at the far end, and the knowledge that if they stopped, they would not walk out at all. The tunnel was narrow and steep, forcing Alara and Jace to move slowly with the weight of the device. The glow from its crystal core lit the walls in shifting colors, casting strange shadows that twisted with every step. Behind them, the distant sound of armored feet echoed through the chamber they had left, growing fainter only because the stone swallowed the noise. The air grew colder as they descended. Thin streams of water trickled along the walls, reflecting the device's light in sharp flashes. Jace kept glancing over his shoulder, not out of fear but to measure how much distance they had gained. Alara did not need to look back to know. The Guardians would follow until the end. At the base of the slope, the tunnel split in two directions. One path led deeper into darkness, the other upward toward a faint glimmer of daylight. Jace stopped and studied the map, tracing the lines with his finger. "Up," he said. "That will take us to the outer ridge." Alara shifted her grip on the device and nodded without a word. The climb was slow and exhausting. Every few steps they had to stop to adjust their hold. The crystal thrummed against her palms, almost like a heartbeat, and she wondered if the thing was truly a weapon, or something alive. Jace seemed to feel it too, but his focus never wavered from getting it to safety. Halfway up, the walls widened into a cavern. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and a small pool of water reflected their shapes. Alara paused, her senses tightening. The air here felt different, heavier, as if something massive was hidden just beyond the light. She shifted her stance, ready for trouble. A faint scraping sound came from the far side of the cavern. Jace set the device down and raised his weapon. From the shadows, two of the skeletal guardians stepped forward. Their armor was cracked from earlier blows, but their movements were as sharp as before. Alara lifted her axe, stepping to meet them. Before they could reach Jace, the first swung its bladed arm in a high arc, but she ducked low and cut through its knee joint. It fell with a metallic crash, and she drove her weapon down to finish it. The second lunged for Jace, but he fired twice into its chest, forcing it back. They finished the fight quickly, but the sound would draw more. Jace grabbed the device. Again, and they pushed onward. The tunnel narrowed once more, forcing them to move in single file. The light ahead grew brighter, and with it came the distant sound of wind. Alura's grip tightened. Open air meant fewer places to hide, but it also meant they would be exposed to whatever was waiting outside. When they emerged, the sunlight was blinding after the dark tunnels. They stood on a narrow ledge halfway up the mountainside, with a sharp drop below and a steep climb above. Far across the valley, black shapes moved along the ridges, Dominion scouts. Alara cursed under her breath. They would not have long before. The enemy reached them. Jace scanned the terrain quickly. "There's a path along the cliff that curves north," he said. "If we follow it, we can reach my ship." The words were calm, but Alara could hear the strain in them. The weight of the device, the climb, and the enemy closing in left no room for mistakes. They began the trek along the narrow cliff path, the wind pulling at their clothes and threatening to unbalance them. The valley below was a jagged sea of rock and shadow, and the Dominion scouts were drawing closer with each passing minute. Alara kept her eyes forward, her mind locked on the simple truth: keep moving or die. A sharp whistle cut through the wind. Arrows slammed into the rock near their feet, splintering stone. The scouts had spotted them. Jace urged her forward, his weapon ready in his free hand. Alara adjusted her grip on the device and quickened her pace. The path ahead curved out of sight, and with it lay their only chance to escape. The curve of the cliff path revealed a narrow ledge ahead, barely wide enough for two people to stand side by side. Beyond it, the path split around a rock outcrop before disappearing from view. Jace glanced over his shoulder and saw the Dominion scouts moving faster now, their weapons drawn and glinting in the sunlight. Alara shifted the device higher in her grip, the weight beginning to grind against her arms. The wind tore at her hair, carrying with it the shouts of the soldiers behind them. Every step along the crumbling ledge felt like walking on the edge of a blade. One wrong move would send them into the valley below. They reached the outcrop and found a shallow alcove in the stone. It offered only partial cover, but it was enough to break line of sight. Jace motioned for them to pause. "We need to slow them down," he said. Alura's gaze flicked toward the device. "If we leave it here, even for a fight, we risk losing it." He shook his head. "Then we fight with it in hand." The first Dominion soldier rounded the corner, moving low and fast. Alura's axe met him before he could raise his weapon, the blade cutting clean through his armor. Jace fired into the second, sending him tumbling back into the others. The narrow path forced the enemy to come at them one by one, but it also trapped Alara and Jace in place. A sharp clang echoed from above. Alara looked up to see movement on the cliffs higher up. Her eyes narrowed as she recognized the skeletal guardians, climbing like predators along the rock face. They had followed them from the chamber, their cold blue eyes fixed on the device. The fight was about to come from two sides at once. Jace adjusted his stance, keeping his weapon aimed at the soldiers while glancing toward the guardians. "We can't hold this spot," he said. Alura's voice was low but certain. "Then we take the fight to them." Without waiting, she lunged forward. driving into the enemy line before they could react. Her strikes were fast and brutal, forcing the soldiers back step by step. Jace moved with her, firing in tight bursts that dropped the ones who tried to circle around. The sound of the gunfire echoed down the cliffside, drawing the attention of more soldiers further down the path. Above, the Guardians moved closer, their bodies clinging to the stone like shadows given shape. One of the Guardians leaped from the cliff, landing behind them with a heavy impact that cracked the stone. Alara spun, swinging her axe in a wide arc that forced it back. Jace pivoted to shoot another soldier trying to rush them. Every moment was a balance between attack and survival, the enemy pressing from both sides. The ledge shook as another Guardian dropped down, its bladed arm slashing at the air between them. Alara caught the strike on the haft of her axe and pushed back with all her strength. Jace's shot took it in the head, sending it sprawling into the valley below. The victory was brief, as more shapes moved above them. "We move now, Jace," sighed, grabbing the device's base. Alara took the other side, and together they pushed forward along the path. The soldiers tried to block them, but the narrow trail worked both ways. One by one, they fell to axe or bullet. The Guardians followed along the cliffs, their pace matching the desperate climb. The path began to widen near the top, leading to a plateau. The flat ground ahead promised a better chance to move freely, but also meant they would lose the choke point that had kept the fight manageable. Alura's breath came in sharp bursts, her muscles burning from the weight of the device and the constant battle. They broke onto the plateau just as the last of the soldiers fell. The open space gave them a view of the ridges beyond and far. In the distance, the dark silhouette of a ship. Jace's voice was rough but determined. "That's our way out." Alara looked at the Guardians climbing toward them and knew the fight was far from over. The plateau gave them a moment to breathe, but the sound of pursuit was close behind. The Guardians were scaling the final stretch of the cliff, their skeletal forms moving with relentless precision. Jace adjusted his grip on the device and nodded toward the distant ship. "We run now, or we die here," he said, his voice low but urgent. Alara's eyes swept the terrain ahead. The ground between them and the ship was broken by jagged rock, formations and patches of loose gravel. Perfect ground for an ambush. She tightened her hold on the device and started forward, her boots kicking up dust with every step. Jace stayed close, his weapon scanning the ridges for movement. Halfway across, the first Dominion soldiers appeared from behind the rocks. They had taken a position to cut off the path to the ship. Alara set the device down and stepped forward with her axe. "Keep it safe," she told Jace without looking back. Then she charged into the line of soldiers with the full force of her strength. Her strikes were brutal and precise, each swing clearing space around her. The soldiers tried to close in, but she was faster, her weapon flashing in the sunlight. Jace supported her with covering fire, dropping enemies who tried to slip past her defenses. The air filled with the sound of steel and gunfire, each second bought with effort and pain. Then the Guardians arrived. Their forms burst over the edge of the plateau, moving toward the device with unerring focus. Jace shifted his aim, sending bullets into the first two that approached, but their armored bodies absorbed most of the impact. Alara broke away from the soldiers and intercepted the nearest Guardian before it could reach Jace. The clash was fierce. Sparks flew as her axe met the Guardian's bladed arm, the sound ringing across the plateau. Jace seized the opening to drag the device toward the ship, his legs burning with the effort. Alara fought to hold the line, each movement a careful balance between power and survival. One Guardian slipped past her, charging straight for Jace. She spun and hurled her axe with all her strength. The blade struck true, burying itself in the creature's spine and dropping it instantly. She sprinted to retrieve her weapon, her breath ragged but her resolve unbroken. The ship grew closer, its dark silhouette now showing details of its hull. An open ramp. A figure appeared at the top, waving for them to hurry. Jace shouted over the noise of battle, "Almost there." Alara gave a short nod and turned back to keep the enemies from closing in. The Guardians advanced without hesitation. Their blue eyes locked on the device. With the ship in sight, Jace reached the ramp and began pulling the device aboard. Alara moved in tight circles around him, striking at any enemy that drew too close. Her arms ached, her armor was dented, and her body was covered in dust and blood. But she did not slow. Every second counted now. The last Guardian lunged for her, taller and faster than the rest. Its blade skinned her shoulder, leaving a shallow cut, but she drove her axe upward through its chest. The glow in its eyes flickered and went dark. She pushed its collapsing form aside and sprinted for the ramp where Jace was waiting. They hauled the device into the ship together. The pilot shouted a warning as the engines roared to life. Dominion soldiers burst into the clearing just as the ship lifted from the ground. Alara stood at the open hatch, gripping her axe as she watched the plateau fall away beneath them. The enemy grew smaller until they were nothing but shadows on the rock. Inside the cabin, Jace leaned against the wall, his breathing heavy but steady. He looked at Alara, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion. "We made it," he said. She met his gaze and gave a small nod. "For now," she replied. Then she rested the axe across her knees and looked at the device between them. Whatever it was, it had been worth the fight. And whatever came next, they would face it together.